Okay, here we are. Let's talk about the gongs. The gongs are basically the main attraction of my sound bath personally. I spend the most time on the gongs, and I feel like they are some of the most potent and effective sound healing tools that we have access to. So I want to talk to you about the gongs that I use, the mallets that I use to play the gongs, and some of the techniques that I use, and some of the reasons why I've chosen these particular gongs. So first of all, I play the gongs my own way. I learned from a lot of sound baths, hundreds and hundreds of sound baths, countless hours of playing the gongs. I've trained with some very high-level gong players and top professionals in the world of gongs that showed me a lot of the reasons gongs are effective and how to play these gongs effectively. And so I can't recommend gongs enough. I also want to talk a little bit about the stands that I use, because if you're going to be using the model that I teach as a sound healer, you're going to be traveling a lot with these gongs. And it's important to have very easy to use gongs and gong stands that you can set up and tear down quickly and easily, and also load into your car. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about the setup of my gongs. Here you see I have 3 gongs. I'm usually at the head of the space, the head of the room. So it's usually people are all behind me while I'm playing the gongs, and I'm facing away from everyone in the room while I'm playing the gongs. I have seen other practitioners do things like place their gongs in the center of the room, and then people are sort of in a circular formation around the gongs. You can set up the space however you choose, but that's how I do it. I like to be at the front of the room, and the gongs are projecting out into the people behind me, the attendees at my sound baths. So let's talk about the techniques. I have this heavy, very heavy mallet that I start with, and this is how I introduce the gong. So I'll just start by tapping very gently on this chow gong, just like that. Very subtle accents. And I'll just let that kind of happen for a few minutes to introduce the gongs so that it's not too overwhelming for the people in the room. You don't want to just go right into the gongs and be too aggressive immediately. You want to sort of subtly introduce the gongs into the soundscape. So I like to use this heavy mallet and start to find sweet spots. There's these sort of sweet spots that you can find on the surface of the gong that will really ring out well, as opposed to like some other areas that have a more dead sound. You'll start to find those sweet spots that really ring out and fill the room quite nicely. So you just want to play around with where those sweet spots are on your gong, and then start to strike it gently, and just how to have it in sort of the fulcrum of your hand, like so that it kind of just is in this kind of motion, and you're not just, hitting the gong. You want to just kind of have this sort of flow to it. You also don't want to hit the center of the gong. You want to hit sort of these peripheral surfaces of the gong around the circle, around the center of the gong. And then I'll put this big heavy mallet down, and I'll pick up these 2 mallets that I use, this minor mallet, and then this is a mallet that has a harder feel to it, but I like it to tap on the gong continuously. I like to create sort of a wash sound, a continuous wash sound on the gongs. So I'll just show you how I use both these mallets at the same time. This one is good for just sort of like what I was doing with the heavier mallet, and this one I use as a continuous washing sound. So basically what I'll do is have it in the fulcrum of my finger and thumb, my index finger and thumb, and then use the other 3 fingers like this to sort of like just do this, continuous tapping. But you want to make sure that the tapping isn't being heard. You want to make sure that the washing of the gong sound sort of drowns out the sound of the actual impact of the mallet. You don't want to have that tapping. I find that to be quite distracting to the soundscape. So I'll just show you and you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So I'll just play with this on my right hand. You see how I'm just sort of tapping. And this is a chow gong, so it's untuned and it's like the full spectrum of sound. These are two Paiste. This is the Earth Tone Creation Gong by Paiste, and this is the Planetary Series Jupiter Gong by Paiste. And these are both tuned gongs. And I like to use these on either side, so I'm basically reaching to do the same technique with this mallet. And then I'm reaching over to this one to do this, but the main gong that I use is always this one. This is like the root gong, and these are just the accents. Along with your mallets, you can also choose to work with these rubber-tipped mallets called flumings. And they sort of offer a sort of, in my opinion, a little bit of an eerie sort of sound. It's sort of kind of a haunting sound in my opinion. I never use the flumings, but for this video, I'll show you how it's done. It could also be perceived as like whale calling. It sort of sounds like whale, that sound of like whales singing. So I'll give you an example. You just sort of rub the mallet across the surface of the gong. It sounds pretty cool though when you let it ring out like that. So that's just another option that you can work with to add in more variety into your soundscape while you're using your gongs. So you really want to be in control of the volume of the gongs. You don't want to go too loud and too aggressive. I've been on the receiving end of other gong players in a sound bath, and I found them to be playing way too aggressively, which actually was jarring, and it actually pulled me out of my relaxing theta brainwave that is the intention. The intention of the gongs is to emanate the full spectrum of sound so that it confuses the analytical part of the mind, because it can't grasp onto all of the sound and frequencies and overtones that are coming off of these gongs. And so the mind is trying to grasp onto what it's hearing, like the part of your brain that's hearing me speak right now. That part of the brain won't be able to grasp onto the full spectrum of sound and frequency and vibration that's being perceived. And so it gives up thinking, and then it naturally descends, it slows down the brainwave frequency and puts people into a state of theta brainwave, which is another way of saying meditation. So when you hear gong meditation, it's almost like the gongs are creating an involuntary state of meditation. And sometimes that leads to sleeping to delta brainwave. And you hear that a lot, and we'll address that in this program too, what to do about people that fall asleep and start snoring, because that happens almost every single time I do a sound bath. People are snoring, and there's a way that you can preemptively nip that in the bud before you even start the sound bath, but we'll get to that. These gongs are very powerful. They can they can cause an involuntary state of meditation, which leads to the nervous system going over to the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, and then the body goes to homeostasis and goes through all kinds of self-healing processes. That's the medicine of the gongs on a scientific level. So it's important to play these gongs in a certain way that induces that deep state of meditation. And if you're playing them too aggressively and too loudly and hitting them too directly with these mallets, then it's going to be too jarring for the recipients and the attendees of your sound baths, and they're not going to have that deep experience that they're hoping for. So it's really important for those reasons to play these gongs very specifically with a gentle technique that's not too quiet, but it's also not too loud either. You want it to fill the room, but you don't want it to be overwhelming and too intense. Yeah, the gongs I use, this is the Chow gong, a 36-inch Chow, 28-inch Jupiter gong by Hsi, and then a 32-inch Earth Tone Creation gong over here. And I've been using this setup of gongs for quite a long time now. One thing to remember is that repetition is the mother of all skill. So the more you practice and sit with your gongs and play them, and that goes for all of the sound healing instruments that you use, the more repetitions you get, the more little subtleties you're going to start to pick up and start to understand, and the techniques are going to improve. Continue to work with these instruments and continue to get better, just 1% better every time you go out and do a sound bath. And over the year, you're going to be 100% better, 200% better. It's just all about the practice and repetition. I can show you in this video my techniques for how I play them, but I think you're going to learn so much from just going out there and actually working with these instruments and getting hands-on with it and getting that repetition practice in.